Greetings to all my viewers and welcome back to your favorite channel on military history. In our last episode, Chapter 12 Part 1, we witnessed the tragic collapse of Sela, the ambush at Bridge 2, the death of Brigadier Hoshiar Singh, and the heroic last stand at Lagyala Gompa, moments that revealed both the courage of our soldiers and the failures of leadership. Today, let's continue our journey as we move into Chapter 12 Part 2, the final countdown. This chapter will take us deeper into the closing days of the 1962 war, where the nation stood shaken, but its soldiers left behind a legacy of sacrifice and honor. And friends, if you're finding this journey meaningful, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. If you'd like the PDF notes, feel free to call on the number shown on your screen. Without further ado, let's dive straight into today's story. 17th November 1962. Thembang. On a cold morning, Lieutenant Colonel Jai Singh made the call to pull back 5 guards. It was meant to be a controlled withdrawal, a chance to regroup and fight again. But on these narrow Himalayan tracks, withdrawal often meant collapse. As Jai Singh's column wound its way through forests and ravines, the order of march disintegrated. Vehicles became separated, stragglers lost contact, and rumors of encirclement spread like wildfire. Within hours, the discipline of a proud battalion gave way to confusion and panic. And Thembang was not alone. Across NEFA, the pattern had repeated itself time and again. Whenever a commander left the field, the chain of command broke. At Namkachu, at Sangadhar, at Sela, soldiers had stood ready to fight, but leadership had vanished. Now, with Thembang abandoned, that same chaos rippled down the valley. Its shadow stretched toward Bomdila, the last stronghold left between the Chinese and the Assam plains. The war was no longer just about the front lines. It was about the collapse of command itself. By 18th November, the Chinese 33 Regiment began probing toward Bomdila. Silent patrols slipped through pine forests and ridgelines, testing Indian defenses. Each night, they climbed higher, appearing on slopes that overlooked the town. Inside Bomdila itself, the picture was bleak. Defenses were improvised, a few strands of barbed wire here, a handful of sandbagged positions there. Yet, in the depots lay unopened crates, mines, coils of wire, tools that could have fortified the town. They were never used. Why? Because many in command still believed the Chinese would not advance this far. That Bomdila, the last shield before Assam, would remain untouched. It was a fatal illusion. The illusion of security at Bomdila didn't last long. By midday, 48 Brigade, the last organized formation in the sector, had begun to melt away. Official records would later call it a redeployment. But in reality, leadership had pulled back early, leaving their men scattered and confused. At 2 p.m., even as Indian Air Force Dakotas roared overhead, parachutes filled the sky, food, ammunition, winter gear. But there was no one left to collect them. The drop zone lay deserted. Inside Brigade headquarters, the scene was surreal. A field phone rang unanswered. Maps with carefully placed pins showed units that no longer existed. And in the logbook, the last entry stopped mid-sentence, as if the writer himself had vanished into the chaos. By late afternoon, Bomdila was on the edge of collapse. At 3:30 p.m., a desperate call crackled through from Tezpur. With the brigade staff gone, only one voice remained steady: Lieutenant Colonel Bhupinder Singh, commander of 22 Mountain Regiment. He told the truth no one wanted to hear. The outer defenses were gone, one Madras was cut off, and command had simply vanished. The answer from Tezpur was blunt: you will now assume command of 48 Brigade. Hold Bomdila if you can. If not, fall back to Tenga. For the first time, the defense of Bomdila was in the hands of an artillery officer, while reinforcements from 3 JAK Rifles and 6/8 Gurkhas struggled to make their way up the winding roads. As night closed over Bomdila, the silence was broken by a fierce cry, Durga Mata Ki Jai. The men of 3 Jammu and Kashmir Rifle had arrived. Their voices echoed through empty streets, once held by 48 Brigade, now airily deserted. Led by Lieutenant Colonel Gurdial Singh, the battalion marched in with discipline and resolve. For the scattered defenders, their arrival felt like a lifeline. In a dimly lit bunker, Gurdial Singh clasped hands with Lieutenant Colonel Bhupinder Singh of 22 Mountain Regiment, now in emergency command. The plan was simple, bold, and urgent. Hold Bomdila through the night, regroup with the incoming Gorkhas, and at first light, counterattack to retake the positions lost by one Sikh light infantry. For the first time in hours, there was order, there was purpose. Yet, in the ridges beyond, unseen shadows of the enemy were already tightening their grip. That evening, the Chinese watched quietly from the heights. For a brief moment, Bomdila had a chance. Its ridges unchallenged, its defenders regrouping. With firm command, the town could have been held. But the opportunity slipped away. Brigade headquarters lay abandoned, orders were muddled, and units scattered in isolation. Later, official records would soften the truth, burying chaos under neat reports and red stamps. What could have been a stand of defiance dissolved into myth and paperwork. By nightfall, one Madras stood alone. Their wireless sets crackled with silence, brigade headquarters had vanished, orders never came. At 11 p.m., Lieutenant Colonel Ratan Singh made the call. They would withdraw on their own. Guided only by a folded map and compass light, the battalion slipped quietly into the jungle. The men moved in single file, weapons slung low, every sound magnified in the misty forest, rain dripping on leaves, boots crunching on wet soil. They marched as one, disciplined and cohesive. But they were blind, Bomdila was gone, NEFA was distant, and Chinese patrols already lurked in the folds of the jungle ahead. For one Madras, the road was uncertain and the night unforgiving. While one Madras stumbled blind through the jungle, Bomdila headquarters, long deserted, saw ghostly return. Just before midnight, the brigade major appeared, not to rally the troops, not to restore order, but to quietly collect files and coded logs. The heart of the fortress beat one last time, only to be shut down. On his desk lay the plans for the dawn counterattack, the one chance to retake lost ground. With a stroke of a pen, that chance was erased. A single message now remained: withdraw to Rupa, establish a line there if possible. The soldiers in trenches never heard a word. They prepared through the night, waiting for an attack that would never come, while their commanders had already written Bomdila off the map. At first light, the hills echoed with a new sound: boots and bugles. The Chinese had seized the high ground and were pouring downhill in force. Columns advanced with ruthless speed, lip-frogging along ridges and cutting every road. From Tenga to Rupa to Chaku, the valley became a death trap. Convoys that had set out in the night were caught in daylight, vehicles shredded by automatic fire, men diving off mountain tracks for cover. For 3 Jammu and Kashmir Rifle and 6/8 Gorkhas, there was no time to prepare trenches, no time to regroup. By the time they reached their positions, the battlefield had already collapsed around them. At Tenga, 3 JAK Rifles braced for the Chinese onslaught. They had barely begun to set their mortars when the first enemy shells screamed in. Explosions tore through the valley, showering rock and splinters. The defenses were shallow, hastily scraped into the frozen ground. There were no sandbags, no overhead cover. Every trench was exposed. Men hugged the earth as the mountains echoed with relentless fire. Still, the JAK Rifles fought back. Riflemen fired from crumbling pits. Mortar crews worked until their tubes were smashed. The air filled with smoke, dust, and cries of the wounded. By midday, the battalion could no longer hold together. Platoons broke into small groups, slipping into tree lines, hunted by Chinese fire. Lieutenant Colonel Gurdial Singh himself was surrounded and taken prisoner. Nearly 100 men were dead, missing, or marched into captivity. In just a few hours, a proud battalion had been reduced to fragments, shattered on the slopes of Tenga. the retreating 6/8 Gorkhas found themselves trapped in the narrow Rupa gap. Packed into open soft-top trucks with little cover, they became easy targets. Machine gun fire raked the convoy, tearing through canvas and steel. Casualties mounted, but with grit, the survivors pushed on under the protection of just two remaining tanks from 7 cavalry. By nightfall, they regrouped at Chaku. The men were exhausted, tense, and barely clinging to order. Then, through the darkness, a wavering line of torches appeared on the ridge above. At first, officers assumed it was local TR-1 Bialis moving along the path. But in an instant, the torches vanished, and the hills erupted with tracer fire. It was the Chinese. Panic swept through the lines. Tanks fired blindly into the night. Soldiers scattered into the forests and ravines, trying to escape the chaos. By dawn, silence returned to Chaku. Abandoned rifles, scattered boots, and burnt trucks littered the road. The battalion had suffered catastrophic losses, nearly 150 men killed, captured, or missing in a single night. For a full day, one Madras had struggled through the jungle, hungry and exhausted, searching for friendly lines. At last, they reached the Tenga bridge. The valley seemed eerily calm, the silence almost reassuring. Then the trap closed. From the surrounding ridges, machine guns and mortars opened up, cutting through the column in seconds. Men scattered, some diving for cover, others falling where they stood. Major W. N.C. Hensman, the battalion's second-in-command, led from the front until a burst struck him down. His death left the men leaderless. With no hope of breaking free, Lieutenant Colonel Chandran gathered his officers and surrendered under heavy fire. Others, refusing captivity, slipped into the jungle in small, desperate groups, vanishing into the mist and wilderness. By 20th November, the last fragments of 48 brigades stumbled into the foothills. Exhausted, scattered, and leaderless, they were no longer a fighting force. The 2 battalions meant to defend Bomdila had been shattered. With their collapse, NEFA itself slipped away. The frontier, lost, back in Tezpur, inside the dimly lit OPS room, the crisis deepened. 3 red circles on the wall map, Sela, Dirang Dizong, Bomdila, had all gone dark. Officers bent over grease pencil maps, their voices clashing in frustration. One group urged a last-ditch stand in the plains. Another whispered a ceasefire. The DMO, still defiant, argued for a defense of the Brahmaputra Valley, but his words were drowned in panic. Reinforcements were ordered on paper, yet the real focus shifted to something unthinkable: the evacuation of Tezpur itself. For the first time, India's High Command debated not victory, not even survival in any FA, but whether Assam itself could be held. That night, 18th November 1962, the truth spread not through the army, but through the airwaves. Radios in homes, tea shops, and villages across India crackled with the words, "Bomdila has fallen." For exhausted soldiers still clinging to broken ridges in the mountains, the broadcast felt like a final verdict, their fate sealed before the last bullet was even fired. History can argue over files, orders, and excuses, but the ground tells a different truth. Scattered footprints in snow, spent casings in jungles, and names carved forever in stone. From Bomdila to Rupa, from Tenga to Chaku, and in Tezpur's silent OPS room. 1960 left one unshakable lesson. When leadership falters, it is the soldier who still stands. And with this, we come to the end of Chapter 12, the final countdown. A chapter written in sacrifice, courage, and hard lessons. Stay with us as we move ahead in this journey of the 1962 war, uncovering stories that must never be forgotten. Till then, Jai Hind.